Okay, thanks very much for the invitation, Ricardo. I'm very happy to be here talking about development, talking about diversification of the economy, talking about productivity. I think these are the key issues for our economies. A journalist asked me the other day, everybody's talking about productivity now. It seems like productivity is the big issue. Why now? Why everybody's talking about productivity? And I just remember her that over the last 10 years, 12 years, we experienced in Latin America and in the global economy in general, a significant boom in commodity prices. And when you have an economy like the Chilean economy that produce the export, more than half of the export of Chile comes from copper, then the story was producing copper. You talk to entrepreneurs in the sector, they were saying, well, the only thing that we have to do with these prices is produce copper. I don't care about innovation. I don't care about productivity. I have to produce copper. That's what they were doing. So I think that the fact that we have this significant commodity price boom postergated the discussion on productivity, I would say 5 to 10 years. And now everybody facing the challenge of productivity. And to increase productivity, we have to do several things. There's no one silver bullet that is going to solve all the problems. There's no big policy that is going to change the world, that is going to change your economy. This is not, we're going to sign free trade agreements, and we did that, okay? Chile is an economy that has free trade agreement with 85% of what is produced today in the world. So it's not going to be free trade agreements in order to. And then you say, well, macroeconomic policy framework, sound macroeconomic policy framework. We did that. Okay, so we have an independent central bank. Average inflation rate in the Chilean economy in the last 15 years has been 3%. You have variations, that's good, but 3% on average, that is precisely the inflation target. Fiscal policy, the last figure by the IMF, net government, general government public debt, net public, minus 3%. So we are implementing a structural balance fiscal policy rule. So government spending is determined by permanent revenues, long-term price of copper, potential GDP, so we're doing that. And then you have financial sector. We have a solid financial sector. The last event that we have in the financial sector was the crisis, the big banking crisis in '82. We learned a lot from that crisis, so we have a good regulated financial sector. Institutions, quality institutions. In general, everybody here, I'm pretty sure, will agree that we have good quality institutions in Chile. So now the question is, those 4 pillars that I mentioned were very useful in order to explain what happened to Chile in the last 25 years. Chile has been a successful story, going from below around $5,000 per capita GDP adjusted by purchasing power to $23,000 per capita in 2015, again adjusted by purchasing power. That's a successful story. But now the question is, what is Chile going to do in order to continue growing? And productivity is a challenge. Productivity between 1990 to the year 2000 grew at an average rate of 2%, total factor productivity. And now we're seeing figures in the last 10 years of around 0.9%, if you exclude the mining sector, that is a particular sector. So we have been experiencing a reduction in productivity growth. So we have to do something about productivity. I mentioned there's no silver bullet. We have to do things in several dimensions. One of them is diversifying the economy. I'm going to talk a little bit about diversifying the economy, given that I have 10 minutes, so I have to be fast. The second one is that you need competition policy, and I think that is something extremely important in our region. We have a collusion case, a cartel in the chicken industry in Chile. The economic benefit obtained by those companies that were part of the cartel was $1.5 billion. The fines that they had to pay, $50 million. So you have to do something in terms of competition policy, and that's precisely something that we are doing. If you don't have a competitive economy, you're not going to have productivity. you're not going to have innovation. So you have to do sound, or you have to build sound institutionality in order to be able to provide the right incentives for competition, and for that, in order to increase innovation and productivity. We have to talk about the small and medium-sized companies. Figures are very difficult to get here, but some figures show that the productivity of a small company in Chile is 25% the productivity of a large company in Chile. And the same analysis for a European company is that the productivity of a small company is 70% the productivity of a large company. So if you have those gaps in terms of productivity, you have a problem. So you have to face that. But that's a different story. It's not related to diversification of the economy. Now, and if you start talking about diversification of the economy, then you get into a political discussion, because you are going to be talking about the importance of the government, of the state, in this strategy. And Ricardo was talking about jumping from one tree to another, and you try to jump to nearby trees. And if the tree is not that nearby, then you probably are going to need a more intense government intervention. So I think that the problem with trying to jump to trees that are far away is that you're going to need more policy, more government intervention. And that is going to be a more, you're going to have more discussion, political discussion in your country trying to do that. You have to generate a new industry in the extreme. So what we're doing in Chile is to saying, well, we want to diversify this economy, and we have to diversify this economy. This is an economy in which more than 80% of the export are raw materials. We have been very successful in those sectors. We're very productive in those sectors. Not that productive, but but productive. But you have mining, you have agriculture, you have aquaculture, leading sectors in our economy. But if you look at the sophistication, the complexity of those exports is really low, even to be a natural resource-rich country. If you compare Chile with Australia, with Norway, with South Africa, you're going to see that our sophistication index is very low. So we have a challenge here. Now, how can you do this in the best possible way? I talk about the political constraint. It's not easy to talk about diversification, about government intervention. Because we were talking before, if you talk about diversification, if you talk about industrial policy, everybody's going to start guessing that you want to do something extreme. You want to the government to have a state-owned company. You want to create new sector, and that generate problems with the implementation of this type of policies. Now, the problem is that if you don't have political consensus in your country when you are implementing this type of policies, it's going to be very difficult to be successful. Because all the policies that you have to implement in these areas are policies that require a medium and long-term perspective. Otherwise, they're not going to be useful. So you need political consensus in order to implement these policies. And the discussion in Chile has been very ideological. People say, no, the only thing that you have to do is continue having sound macroeconomic policy framework, free trade, that's it. We're going to do it with that. Markets are going to work. But we know that the world is full of coordination problems, full of need of public goods. And in order to do that, you need a strategy. And precisely what we're doing is that. We're saying, look, we don't want government to take care of some sector in the economy. We want to be able to generate those public goods, to solve those coordination failures in order to generate the diversification of the economy. It's not going to start from a tree that we don't have in our garden. It's going to be a tree that we have that is going to allow us to jump to another tree that is close by. So that is our strategy as a government, in a way of trying to generate a consensus, local consensus on this type of policies. And we announced this, we We announced the roadmap in terms of diversification of the economy, precisely with a sector that is a typical sector in our economy, the mining sector. And we did it because we think that if we are able to show that we are going to diversify, or we can diversify the economy, starting in this sector, we have the possibility to implement long-term policies. A couple of numbers on the mining sector. We export $500 million in goods and services associated to the mining sector in Chile, suppliers of the. Australia exports $10 billion. The equivalent to Chile will be like $4 billion. So the question is, if we have the 30% of world reserves of copper, why we are not exporting goods and services associated with the industry? Because given that we are such a big player in the world, so we have a challenge here. The increase in cost in the production has been phenomenal. 250% increase in the cost of producing copper in Chile in the last 15 years. So we have to do something in this sector. And this sector is a sector that faces many challenges. We're going to have a large underground mining development in Chile. We know that we have underground mining in the rest of the world, but the scale of this challenge in Chile is going to be huge. That implies that you're going to have to generate new machinery in order to operate those those underground mines that are going to be 1,000 meters below the level of sea. So there's no way you're going to have any human being there. So everything is going to be remote. So the technology of connecting machine with machine is going to be there. So what we're saying is very simple. We have to do things in the technology and innovation. And the idea is to have a platform, and an open platform that allows you to innovate, to understand what are the challenges that the industry faces, and then to bring all these minds from the world in order to try to solve it in an open platform, because we think that that is very important. If you think that this the problem of innovation for Codelco is going to be solved within Codelco, that is the same company, forget it. It's not going to happen. So you need to bring different ideas, people from entrepreneurs and innovators from all over the world to solve this type of problem, and try then to build into a more complex system. Human capital, the development of human capital is crucial. The productivity of a worker in the mining industry in Chile is close to half the productivity of of a worker in Australia. So we have to do many things here. And then the idea of connecting supply and demand is very old, but again, the instruments are very difficult. And then what we have said is very simple. You need the collaboration of the public and the private sector. So the idea is to generate this collaboration that is going to generate public goods, is going to solve coordination failures that are going to be able to reduce those productivity gaps. Now, we're a natural resource country, so we have to start from there. These are the sectors in which we are working. We're working with the private sector, with universities, with the government institutions in order to generate a common vision of what we have to do in order to solve the productivity level challenges in each one of these sectors. Because the coordination failures, all the need for public goods are sector specific. So you're not going to use policy that is going to help you to solve all the coordination problems across these different sectors. So you have to work sector by sector. And that's precisely what we're doing. In tourism, you have many the need to generate public goods. Promotion is a public good at the end of the day. So you need to increase that, but then you have to increase the quality of the services that you are provided. If you talk about aquaculture is a tremendous opportunity for our economy, but we haven't been able in the last 30 years to generate good studies, good research, more research and development in order to increase productivity in the sector. So you have a sector that exports close to $4 billion that have losses associated to salmons that are dying by $1 billion. So it's a huge amount that you are basically losing in terms of productivity. And that is why, because you haven't done enough research on disease, you haven't done enough research on food for the salmon. So we're working in every of these sectors in the generation of those public goods, solving those coordination failures. That is our strategy. We think that if we are able to work public, private, in a sort of an idea of infrastructure, it's very easy to get to agree on infrastructure, no? And the private-public partnership in infrastructure is extremely successful. Everybody's saying, well, okay, we have to build this highway. We're trying to do the same approach for specific sectors in our economy, to trying to generate those public goods to solve those coordination failures that allow us to increase productivity, but at the same time allow us to generate platforms that are going to allow us to jump to different trees in order to diversify our economy, because that is definitely a challenge for the Chilean economy. Thank you.